He saved a runaway bride, but the groom's men wanted her dead. Blood seeped through the white veil, turning lace into ruin. Clara's bare feet slapped against the hardpan as she ran, every stride pulling the desert night into her chest like knives. The moon showed no mercy. Its light revealed the red welts on her wrists, the torn hem of her gown, the dust caked onto her trembling legs. Somewhere behind, laughter drifted. Men's laughter, cruel, mocking, promising she would not make it far. Her lungs burned. The rope had only just been cut from her wrists, but the skin still stung. Every time she stumbled, she heard again the sound of their boots, the crack of a whip lashing across her back when she tried to resist. A bride, they called her, though she'd never spoken the vow. A bride bought, branded, and dragged to the altar of a man she did not love. She ran now not for freedom alone, but for life itself. Through the desert scrub, a figure watched. Elias, a rancher grown old in solitude, leaned against the fence of his lonely spread. His hair was silvered, his mustache thick, his face carved by years of wind and dust. He thought he was seeing a ghost. No bride belonged in such a place at such an hour. Yet as she staggered toward him, clutching her ribs, Elias felt the ground shift beneath the quiet of his years. She collapsed at his feet, gasping like a deer run to earth. Blood smeared across her hands, her veil half torn, her eyes swollen from tears and smoke. For a moment, Elias considered walking back inside, shutting the door to a world not his. But her whisper changed everything. Please, don't let them take me back. In the silence that followed, the desert breathed heavy. Elias saw the shadows of riders cresting the ridge, torches swaying like hungry stars. They were not searching blindly, they were hunting. The air carried the stench of whiskey and the clang of spurs. He knew the kind of men these were. Once they found her trail, they would scour every homestead, every barn, every shadow. And if they found her under his roof, they would not spare him. Elias's hand rested on the fence rail, gripping until the wood cracked. This was no stray calf, no simple kindness. This was war he had not asked for. But when he looked again at the girl, bruised and broken at his boots, he knew a choice had already been made inside him. By saving her, he had painted a target on his own back. And the riders were closing in. The night was a drumbeat of hoofs and shouts. Elias lifted Clara into his arms, her body light yet trembling as though it carried the weight of the whole desert. He pushed through his cabin door and set her on a rough-hewn chair, the lamplight spilling across her torn gown. Her lips were cracked, her eyes wide with the terror of a hunted animal. "Water," she whispered. He poured from a tin cup, steady hands betraying the storm inside him. Clara drank greedily, choking between gulps. When she looked up, her gaze searched his, as if asking whether she had exchanged one prison for another. Elias closed the shutters and doused the lamp, leaving only the faint glow of embers. Outside, the riders spread like wolves, their voices carried on the wind. One man shouted, "The bride's ours! Ain't no rancher fool enough to hide her." Their laughter followed, cruel and certain. Elias stepped to the door and peered through the cracks. Boot tracks already scarred the dirt road leading toward his spread. The torches bobbed closer. He thought of the years he had spent carving quiet out of wilderness. Fences mended, cattle branded, nights silent but for coyotes. All of it now felt fragile, as if one spark from their torches would burn it to ash. "Why are they after you?" he asked, voice low. Clara swallowed hard. "I was to marry him. Not by choice. His men tied me, struck me, dragged me to the church. I fought. I spat in his face. And when they left me alone for a breath, I ran." Her fingers dug into the chair arms until her knuckles blanched. "If they take me back, I won't live till dawn." A silence settled, thick as smoke. Elias turned to the rifle propped by the door, then let his hand fall short. He had buried his weapons long ago, tired of blood. He would not greet them with bullets. But neither would he hand her over. The hoofbeats grew louder. Dust clouded the windows, and the smell of sweat and horses crept in. Clara grabbed his sleeve, nails biting through fabric. "Don't let them in," she pleaded. Elias placed a hand over hers, rough palm steady. "They'll search," he muttered. "But you'll not be theirs tonight." He guided her toward the cellar, a hatch beneath a woven rug. As the first torchlight flared against his shutters, Clara descended into the dark, her gown whispering against the wood. Elias pulled the rug back into place just as a fist pounded on the door. The rancher's quiet life had ended, and the night had only begun. The pounding on the door rattled the hinges. Elias moved slow, drawing breath steady as the air thickened with smoke and dust. He opened it a crack, meeting the glare of 3 men astride horses, torches blazing against the black. "Evening, old man," one sneered, his teeth dark with tobacco. "Bride came this way. You seen her?" Elias leaned on the doorframe, face carved from stone. "Ain't no brides wandering these parts." "Only coyotes," the man spat, eyes narrowing. Another dismounted, boots sinking into the dirt. He shoved past Elias, stepping inside. The torch's glow licked across the cabin's walls, across the hearth, across the chair still warm where Clara had sat. Elias's jaw tightened. "Careful where you walk. House don't take kindly to uninvited boots." The outlaw smirked, dragging his torch along the wall as though daring flame to catch. He sniffed the air. "Smells like roses and sweat." She was here. A noise drifted from below, the faintest creak of wood, or maybe Clara's breath. Elias coughed, loud and sharp, covering it. "You'll find nothing but dust and beans here." The man glared, but his partner outside barked, "Leave it! She can't run far. We'll track her by morning." Reluctantly, the outlaw kicked at the floorboards, then spat and left. The riders pulled away, their laughter fading into the night. Elias barred the door and exhaled, his hand trembling for the first time in years. He lifted the rug, revealing Clara curled in the dark cellar, arms tight around her knees. Her eyes shimmered when they met his. "You didn't give me up," she whispered. He shook his head. "I've buried too many souls to dig another grave tonight." For hours they moved like shadows. Elias offered her bread, a blanket, a corner by the fire. She touched none of it at first, watching him as if waiting for betrayal. But when he mended a torn hem of her gown by lamplight, his thick fingers clumsy with needle and thread, something in her guard cracked. And out here in the Wild West, every kindness cut both ways. It could save a life or paint a target on your back. If this tale has your heart racing, don't ride on without leaving your mark. Subscribe now for more stories of love, betrayal, and survival. Because the next twist in this tale may change everything. Later, when he pretended to sleep in his chair, she whispered into the quiet. "If kindness is a trap, let it spring. I'd rather die here than in his arms." Elias did not stir, but her words sank deep as roots. Outside, the desert stilled. Yet the valley carried more than silence. It carried the promise of riders returning, stronger, crueler, unwilling to leave without blood. And Elias knew. By dawn, their noose would tighten. By morning, the desert sky boiled with storm clouds. Wind tore at the eaves, carrying the smell of rain and smoke. Elias rose early, stacking wood by the hearth, while Clara folded the blanket she had dared to use. Their silence was heavy but not hollow. It was filled with glances that lingered too long, with hands brushing as he passed her the tin cup of coffee. "Why help me?" she asked softly, staring into the steam. Elias didn't answer right away. He tugged his coat tighter, eyes fixed on the horizon. "Because I've seen what happens when men take what ain't theirs. And I've stood by once before. Won't do it again." Thunder rolled, distant but threatening. Clara studied him. The scars across his knuckles, the loneliness stitched into his posture. She wanted to ask what ghosts haunted him, but the storm answered first. By noon, riders appeared at the ridge. 6 this time, torches unlit, but rifles strapped across saddles. At their head rode a man in a dark suit, his hair slicked despite the wind. His face was pale, lips thin as a knife. Clara's breath hitched. "That's him," she whispered. "The groom!" Elias's hand gripped the fence post until it splintered. The groom's men spread wide, encircling the ranch like wolves. One peeled off and rode toward the cabin, rain pelting his hat. "We come for what's ours," he shouted. "Hand her over and we'll spare your walls." Elias stepped onto the porch, rain soaking his shirt, gray mustache dripping. "She ain't a calf to be branded. You won't take her. The groom's gaze hardened. He raised his hand, and in it, not a gun, but a rope, knotted into a noose. "You shelter her, old man. You swing beside her." Clara pressed her palm against the window, her breath fogging the glass. The storm howled, rattling the shutters. Elias stood unflinching, the weight of years pressing against his shoulders. He knew bullets could end it quick, but he had sworn to keep his hands clean of that stain. Still, there are other ways to fight. The groom's men dismounted, boots sinking in the mud. One carried a lantern, another a crowbar. Elias's cattle shifted nervously in the pen, sensing violence in the air. And then, the betrayal. A voice rose from the barn, sharp and familiar. "She's here! In the cabin!" Clara's blood froze. Elias's stomach sank. The traitor was not a rider. It was one of his own hired hands, a boy he had fed, sheltered, and trusted. The circle closed, and the storm finally broke. Rain hammered the roof like gunfire, though not a shot had been fired yet. Elias stood in the doorway, boots planted in mud, watching the groom's men advance. Clara clutched the cabin wall behind him, her breath shallow, her eyes flicking toward the rope swinging from the groom's hand. "Bring her out," the groom ordered, his voice cold and precise. "Or I'll burn this place to the ground." Elias's jaw tightened. "You'll find nothing but ash if you try." The traitor, young Tom, no more than 19, stepped from the barn, pointing a shaking finger toward the cabin. "She's in there. Don't let him fool you." His voice cracked under the weight of rain and guilt, but the riders cheered, drawing closer. Clara gasped, betrayal cutting deeper than any whip. Elias didn't flinch. He stepped down from the porch, the storm soaking him to the bone. He held no rifle, no pistol, only the axe he had been splitting wood with that morning. Its blade gleamed with rain. The men sneered. "What'll you do, old man? Chop firewood at us?" Elias planted the axe in the mud, handle upright like a marker on a grave. "You want her? Step past me. But know this. Every boot print laid on this land, every hand stretched toward that girl is a choice. And choices in the West carry prices." The groom laughed, sharp as glass. He dismounted, walking slow, his boots sinking deep. "You think you can stop me without a gun?" "No," Elias said. "But I can stop you with truth." He turned to Tom, his voice thundering louder than the storm. "You betray for coin, but you'll spend your life haunted by what you sold. A bride to chains, a man's honor to dust. Is that the weight you want to carry?" Tom froze, his face pale. The riders muttered. Doubt cracked through their ranks. Clara stepped forward, trembling but tall. She pulled the torn veil from her head and let it drop into the mud. "I am not his bride," she cried. "I am flesh and blood, not cattle. If you follow him, you'll be no better than the chains he drags." The storm swallowed her voice, but the men heard. Two lowered their torches. One spat in the mud and turned his horse away. The groom snarled, fury twisting his face. He lunged for Clara. Elias moved first. He swung the axe, not to kill, but to bury its blade into the porch beam. The crack echoed like thunder, splitting wood and sending shards flying. The groom stumbled back, mud splashing across his suit. Silence fell. The riders, shaken, pulled their mounts away. Even Tom dropped his gaze, shame flooding his eyes. The groom was left alone, rope dangling useless in his hand. He cursed, retreating into the storm, his men scattering like shadows. Elias stood still, chest heaving, rain coursing down his face. Clara touched his arm, her hand small against the weathered strength of his. For the first time since she had run into the night, her breath steadied. The storm eased, leaving only the sound of dripping eaves and the crackle of distant thunder. In the Wild West, choices carried prices. Elias had paid with his peace. Clara had paid with her innocence. But together, they had bought something rarer than gold: freedom. If this story gripped your heart, don't let it fade with the rain. Like this tale, subscribe and ring the bell. For out here, love may be scarcer than water, but it always finds a way.